some recipes, I have decided to make a water kefir video for today. For those of you who don't know water kefir or kefir, or I forget the other pronunciation I've heard, it is similar to kombucha. It's a bubbly fermented drink which has lactobacillica in it, which is the good bacteria that you have in your gut or your intestines, whatever you want to call it. So that's the stuff that helps take care of the yeast inside your body. And if you have too much yeast and not enough lactobacillica, then you end up having other problems, even beyond just digestion, which is also where you get gluten allergies that come in at. But anyway, it's got good bacteria for your gut, which is something we could all use a little bit more of. I've done a lot of fermentation. Well, not a lot. I've done a decent amount of fermentation, different kinds. I've done sauerkraut and other lacto-fermented vegetables. I've also done sourdough. I was considering kombucha, but I don't like the flavor of kombucha. I've tried. I've really tried because it's really good for you. There's also milk-based kefir, which is more commonly seen in stores. I forget the name of the brand that you see most, but that is a lot more sour, and people who have dairy problems obviously can't do that because it's milk-based. It consumes the milk sugar. So what kefir does is you have water kefir grains or milk kefir grains, and basically they eat the sugar in the liquid and produce the good bacteria that you want. So you put a good amount of sugar in, but when it comes out, it's all been consumed by the grains and turned into the bacteria that you want in your gut. So today I'm going to show you how to make it. It's really easy. It's the easiest kind of fermentation I've ever done. And a side note, if you have a warm kitchen or a decently warm kitchen, they do grow rather quickly. So plan on giving plenty of it away or drinking lots and lots of water kefir. You do want to be careful that because with the second fermentation they get very bubbly, and the pressure will build up inside your jar. And if you forget to burp it or pop it open, let some of the gas out, they can end up exploding. So you do have to be careful with it. I've never had one explode. My brother and sister-in-law decided to try brewing their own kombucha and forgot about some jars one time, swing top bottles one time, and had shrapnel all over their kitchen. So due to that, not personal experience, but knowledge, I am very careful to make sure I keep them burped. Also, if it's warmer weather, you will have to burp them more often. But you'll just kind of get the hang of it, and the longer you do it, the more the water kefir grains adjust to your water, your sugar, your climate, and they will become more bubbly. The first couple times you do it, it might not be very bubbly, but they get more and more bubbly, like this one. It is still sweet, but mildly sweet, and you can tell that it's fermented like any other kind of fermented product. You can taste that fermentation, but it's not a strong taste, and I don't think it's a bad taste. My parents think it's a little bit weird, but my kids love it, which is always a plus because, you know, it's good for them. So you can do it a lot of different ways, but I'm just kind of rambling now, and I'm just going to jump in and show you how to make it because it's really, really, really easy. Okay, let's go. So I'm just going to grab my water kefir. I keep it up high on a shelf for the first fermentation, and I showed you that right at the beginning. I have this giant jar. It's a very old, oversized pickle jar that my mom let me borrow. If I ever find a prettier one, I'll probably snag it for use. This holds about 15 cups of water. So I put 12 cups in, plus sugar and the water kefir grains, which you can see down here at the bottom. Some of them are floating up at the top. I've read that this happens when they become completely saturated with the sugar. You can see it kind of floating up and down, but mostly they just rest at the bottom. You might also be able to see there's some bubbles in there. I don't know if you can see them. There's a lot of light reflecting on this glass jar. So for the first fermentation, you don't want to completely seal it. You just want to keep the dirt out. So I have just a cloth napkin with a rubber band. You could also just use a string, tea towel, coffee filter, anything like that. So after it's fermented, like it is now, it has a very mild, sweet smell to it, but you can definitely catch that lightly sour fermented flavor. So I have this batch that's been sitting for about 3 days. It's a little longer than I normally leave it. I usually change it right at 3 days, but last time I was a little bit off with my timing. I ended up switching it out in the evening, which I usually do it in the morning. So this is about 3.5 days, but 3 is plenty. And if it's really warm, you can do it in 2. But you can usually tell when it gets real bubbly and they kind of start floating, and you can smell the difference in the flavor. So I'm gonna grab my swing top bottles. I have 3. That should just about do it. I might have a little bit extra, so we'll see how much I have. Let me get my other one. Swing top bottles are good because it's easy to let the pressure out. So these, the nice thing about continually doing it is you don't really have to wait for them to dry out completely. So I have 3 bottles here, and this is for the second fermentation. So for the second fermentation, you have to remove the grains, and you can add flavoring and more sugar, and you cap it off so that the bubbles can't escape. They are contained in the bottle, and it builds up the pressure and makes like a soda almost. How it has that kind of, it's not carbonation, but it's that kind of carbonated feeling. That's what gives you all the nice bubbles. So I'm going to get my funnel. And my strainer and a bowl. So I have a bowl here to put my grains in when I'm done, and I'll cover it and put it over there until I'm ready to start my next batch. I have just a regular funnel. You can use metal, you can use plastic, whatever you have. Side note about funnels, just because always remember that some of the liquid will be in the funnel. So when you start getting closer to the top, pay attention so you don't overflow your bottle. I have done that once when I was distracted. So you can measure it out, or you can just do it kind of by eye. I'm trying one new thing this time. I had 1 large bag of hibiscus tea left. So this is tea that I made earlier. It's hibiscus, and I think there might be some raspberry or something else in there. So it's a herby, fruity kind of tea. It has already been sugared. I put plenty of sugar in it because you want to get a nice fermentation. So think southern sweet tea, nice and sweet, almost syrupy. Not quite so much that you wouldn't want to drink it, but just about. And you want between a half cup and 1 cup. So like I said, I'm just gonna eyeball it. And I've got plenty of this, so I'll save some of it and I'll freeze some of it for future ferments. So I have this one. This is my hibiscus. And then this one, I'm just gonna use Juicy Juice apple juice because I have some. So, and actually I tried this for the first time last time, and it had the best carbonation. I think it's because of the amount of sugar that's in it. that was a little bit more than the other one, but that's okay. And it made, that's this one that I showed you earlier. It made a really, really nice water cover. So that's actually really convenient because we're on WIC and they always give us way more than we need of anything, but particularly juicy juice. Like, I don't like to give my kids that much juice. I forget how much the juice they give us, but it's something like 6 bottles, 5 bottles. I don't know. It's ridiculous. So here's another thing, which I've done before. Oh, you can't see that. Let me see if I can block the light. There we go. So this is just some pineapple juice. This is canned pineapple and 100% juice. So when we were finished eating the pineapple, I just saved the juice and I strain it to make sure there's no chunks of pineapple, because they're a pain to clean out, and just dump some in there, and that way you're not wasting the juice either. And that worked nicely. You can use fresh fruit and you can use dried fruit, you can use herbs, and you can use spices. We did cranberry and clove with maple syrup, and my kids really like that. The clove, I will warn you, comes out really, really strong, so you only need a couple in there. Don't overdo it. Or you can use herbs. You can make a simple syrup with your herbs first and add it later. You can use frozen fruit, just unfreeze it first. You don't want anything too hot or too cold because it'll mess with the bacteria. You want it to be nice and room temperature. So I have hibiscus and apple juice and canned pineapple juice that I'm going to be using. Alright, so now that I have all my juice in here, like I said, you can use fresh, frozen, or dried fruit. My only fig with that is when you have chunks of stuff, you do have to strain it, unless you want chunks of stuff in there, little fibers and whatnot. And also, it's difficult to get out of the bottle, and sometimes the little bits of stuff kind of get stuck to the sides of the bottle, and then you have to clean it, and it can just kind of be a pain. And I've discovered that juice works great, and it's a lot easier maintenance wise. So I have decided to continue with juice. You can have homemade juice, fresh juice, canned juice. You can use nectar. So now that I've got that in there, I'm going to strain the water kefir grains out of this and put it into the bowl. I have, now this is important, I have a nylon fine mesh strainer. And the reason I have a nylon fine mesh strainer, even though I hate plastic and I have plenty of metal strainers, is because the metal can damage the grains. Now, when I first started researching this, I saw lots of people recommend using this, and I was a little bit annoyed. Like, seriously, why is everybody so obsessed with this nylon strainer? But then one person, only one, mind you, explained that the reason to use nylon is because it's softer, it's a lot gentler on your grains, it's less likely to damage them. So I did go ahead and buy one of these off Amazon. They're really cheap. It's just a little nylon strainer, and it fits perfectly in my funnel. It's got these nice little hooks on the edges, you see here, so it doesn't slide off. So I'm gonna go ahead and move back to the front. Now, I did have this in smaller jars, but then it started growing. So it's going to be pretty interesting trying to pour it in here from this huge jar. So bear with me if I make a mess. Now remember, you don't want to fill it too high. So once you start getting about halfway, do it in spurts to make sure you don't overfill it. Dripped a little bit there. That's about high enough. You can fill it up a little bit higher than that, and I might top it off a bit more, but you don't want to fill them much past this line here. So about where the cap hangs to is a good place to stop. That way there's room for that pressure to build without it popping open. So that one, the hibiscus, is filled, and I might top it off later, depending on how much I find I have. Then I have the apple juice. Just gonna fill that one up. Alright, so that one bubbled up a bit more. I do have extra in here, so I have another one. I'll just add some apple juice too. Now, see, most of the grains are still in the bottom, but there's a little bit in there. I'll show you what they look like a little bit closer up. To these two colored bottles over here because they were a little bit low. I don't think I'll add any more to the pineapple because it's already looking quite bubbly. So I'll just cap that one off and move it over here. And this one's basically full. Cap that one off. And then I'll add a little bit more to this one. There we go. And just dump the rest of the grains. Try and get all of them out so I don't have to rinse the jar. Slippery, so they do kind of slide out pretty easy. So I'll set that over there and show you these. There we go. So you can see they're kind of light brown and almost kind of like little blobs of gelatin. And those are what your water kefir grains will look like. They can be dehydrated, so it depends where you buy them, but that should be basically what they look like when you get them. The color changes a little bit depending on what kind of sugar you use. So I'm going to go ahead and start my next batch of water kefir, and I'll show you how we do that. So you take your jar. You can go ahead and rinse it out if you want to. Alright, you really don't have to scrub it unless you feel like there's like a bit of a residue there, but generally you can just rinse it with good hot water and that should be fine. Now, I should have, I guess I should measure it again because it keeps growing. So I'll get a measuring cup and another bowl and see how much I actually have. So this is a 1/4 measuring cup, so I have 1 and 2 and 3. So basically I have a whole cup of water kefir grains now, which last time it was a little bit, that's almost a cup. It was a little bit low on that last scoop, but it was almost a cup. And when I put it in, it was a little over 3/4. And I started with a 1/2 cup. So it's, and I've had it for about 2.5 to 3 weeks. So you can see it grows fairly quickly. So being that I have a whole cup of water kefir grains, that means I need a whole cup of sugar. Now, you can use different kinds of sugar, but what you don't want to use is you don't want to use bleached sugar. So this, the light's not the best. You can see it's kind of a blonde color. This is organic, unbleached, unprocessed cane sugar. Just your nice organic sugar, still lightly brown. I have heard that you can use brown sugar. I think you would probably want to be careful with the variety of brown sugar you use. The brown sugar I have, I would not be buying again because I feel like it's a bit off. Sorry. So, doesn't really matter what brand as long as it's organic. It's okay. You don't want to use anything that's been over processed because it will have chemicals in it that will harm your water kefir grains. Like, they might do okay initially, but if you do it over time, it will kill the grains. You also don't want to use honey for your initial fermentation because it will consume the sugar in the honey, but there's other things in honey that react badly with the water kefir grains. So you don't want to use honey in your first fermentation. It's okay to use it in your second fermentation because you've already removed the grains. You can also use syrups or even regular white sugar. If you were to make tea with regular white sugar, that would be fine. You just don't want to put any non-organic sugars with your grains directly because it will damage them or make them sick or sluggish or other things. So I have a whole cup of sugar in there, which means that basically I'm going to have to fill this all the way up. And it'll be a little bit low on the water actually. But next time, well, hopefully I'll be able to give some of this away because I really don't need quite that much water kefir. Even with letting the kids have it at lunch and dinner and drinking it myself, it's starting to get to be a little bit much. So I'm going to see if I can find somebody to give some to. If in the future you would like to be one of those people who live in the area who actually personally know me. I'm not mailing it out or anything. But if you are a friend of mine and you are interested in doing this, let me know and I will put you on a list of people to share with. So I'm going to fill this about halfway up with hot water to help dissolve the sugar. And then I'll fill it the rest of the way up with cold water and then check the temperature because you want it to be kind of between 75 and 85 degrees. You don't want it any hotter than that or any colder than that because it messes with the water kefir grains. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this up halfway with hot water and then come back and stir it. Alright, so now that I've filled it up with hot water, I'm just going to get a big spoon and stir it to help it dissolve a little bit faster. Now, you can use boiling hot water. I find that hot tap water is fine. You do, well, I have well water. So well water is typically the best. It's natural, it's unprocessed, it's got your minerals and things in it, which are good for your water kefir grains. You do not want to use any kind of chlorinated or treated water. Do a little research depending on where you are. If you have well water, just use your tap water. If you're in town, you probably don't want that. So just do your research on your water first. And decide what should be best for you, but avoid treated, filtered, chlorinated clean water. I think spring water is good. I'm not real sure just because I know that our water is fine, so I haven't researched that a whole lot personally. But I do know that you don't want to use any kind of town water that's been treated. This is mostly dissolved. So I'm going to fill it up the rest of the way with cold water and then check the temperature. Alright, so I filled it up pretty much all the way. I might add a little bit more water. All the sugar's dissolved, but I do have almost a cup of water kefir grains. So I didn't want to overfill it. Alright, so I'm just going to slowly and gently add these in. See, they mostly go down to the bottom. Now I am going to add a little bit more extra sugar. I did check the temperature, by the way. As long as it's about room temperature, you're good. So I am going to add some more water just to top it off a bit. I hope I don't make a mess. These are not the best bowls for pouring. There we go. A little bit more, I guess. And then I will cover this and stick it back up on my shelf. It is quite heavy at this point. I don't know how much it weighs, but that's my best spot for it. And I think the shelf will be fine. So you let that sit. I kind of mark this as 0, and when I come back tomorrow I would mark it as 1. I do mark it just because I've got a lot of things going on and I've got 3 children. And it's easy to lose track of time. So I do have a little board up there and mark it every day just so I don't lose track of things because it's easy to do. So just get the rubber band on, hold that in place, and put it in a warm place to sit for about 2 to 3 days. If it's really hot in your kitchen, it can be as fast as like 1 full day, but that's rare. But you'll kind of get the hang of when it's ready. And you can let it sit a little bit longer, but you don't want it too long because the longer it sits, the less sugar is in there for it to eat, and it will start to get hungry. So I'm going to put this up on my shelf and then talk a little bit about flavors. So, as I mentioned, I have my tea and my apple juice and my pineapple juice, and that I like to use juice as opposed to fresh fruit just because it's easier to deal with. Now, ginger is a popular addition. I made some lemon thyme syrup, which I think is delicious with blueberries, and the blueberries are small and round, so they come out pretty easily. So that is another one that I like a lot, is blueberries and lemon thyme. The apple came out really good, and pineapple with ginger was pretty yummy. Actually, I made some pineapple ginger, and then I added it to orange juice, and that was really, really tasty. So yeah, there are lots of recipes online, and basically just kind of work with it and try things, see what you like. You can use pretty much any kind of sugar for your second fermentation. It can be syrups or honeys, it can be fresh fruit, it can be a mixture of all of those. You can make simple syrups with herbs or flowers, like if you wanted to do like a lavender lemonade. My husband doesn't like lavender. You see, it's already got a little bit of pressure in there. It slowly pops up. But just experiment and find what you like. A tip about cleaning swing top bottles, because they're a large bottle with a narrow top. They can be a real pain to clean. So my tips for cleaning them are: clean them as soon as you're done using it. Do not put them in your dishwasher. The water can't properly get into the bottles to clean them, so don't try that. Just skip it. Clean it with a little bit of soap and as hot of water as you can get. You can use boiling water if you want. Shake it really good to break off any little bits that might be stuck to the side. If you find that you have any extra like little residue that's stuck on that you can't get off, just stick some dry rice in your bottle. I have a whole bag of cheap rice under my sink just for cleaning things. So if you have like a vase or a bottle that has like stuck on stuff that you can't get off, just put like a teaspoon of rice in with a little bit of water or soapy water and cap it and just shake it until it's all knocked off. The rice grains act as an abrasion to just kind of knock things off. So I'm going to put these under my sink. You can put them in a box. I definitely suggest putting them in a cabinet, just in case something happens and they do explode. That way you don't have glass all over your kitchen or wherever. You can go ahead and put them in a box that way. If something were to happen, it's all kind of at least mostly contained in the box. But just the second fermentation doesn't take as long. Usually I only have it in there for 1 or 2 days depending on the temperature. So just pop them very gently every 6 to 12 hours. The first time you don't have to pop it as soon, so maybe 12 hours, 10 to 12 hours. And then the second time pop it a little bit sooner because it'll be building more and more at that point. So to burp them, basically what you do is you hold it and you just want to pop it very lightly. And right now it doesn't have much pressure, but you just want to open it a little bit to let some of the pressure out. Now when you do get a lot of pressure, it may bubble up like a soda that's been shaken, so just be careful with that. Even when you open it to pour it, you know, be careful. Keep it near the sink just in case. So just kind of pop them open. It's called burping. And let them sit for 1 to 2 days. And then before you put them in the fridge, go ahead and give it a quick burp to let any extra pressure out. In the fridge, I've read you only have to burp them like once a week, but honestly, I don't know how you could leave a bottle in there for that long. So, yeah, that's basically it. They're really yummy. They're really good for you. They are so easy. Like, you just sit it there for a while and forget about it. Don't forget about it too much, but, you know, relatively forget about it. Let me know if you decide to try it. If you have tried it, what your favorite flavors are. Any tips or tricks or recommendations. If you're a friend of mine and you want to try these, send me a message or leave me a comment and I'll put you on a list of people to share it with as they grow. Because I really don't ever need more than about a cup of them, and they grow pretty quickly. So that's all for today. If you have any questions, let me know. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff down there at the bottom. And I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.